Hello, art historians, and here we are in our first lecture over the Rococo time period, which is, or technique, or style, or whatever thing you want to call this hideous, in my opinion, moment in art history. It comes directly after the Baroque, so if Baroque is 1600 to 1700, the Rococo is actually going to be pretty short-lived itself. It's going to be from 1700 to 1750, and part of the reason for that is there's really no point to it. And in 1750, the Enlightenment is going to start, where people start doing things because they make sense. And the Rococo doesn't really make a lot of sense, in my humble opinion, as you can see based on the memes that I have chose to include. And I find that it's ironic that I have to talk about this style based on painting love and feelings and happiness on Valentine's Day is when I'm recording this. So yay for me, because I don't love this at all. All right, so I'm going to give you a second. I'm just going to scroll through a couple of these Rococo style paintings, none of them that you actually have to know for the 250, but see if you can kind of gather a common theme in terms of the content that is shown and also form in the way that these are painted. So just go ahead and take a look. Here's another one. Remember, we're coming directly off the Baroque with all of its depth and meaning and purpose and what it was about. Here's another one, so you can see that. Okay. There. Yeah, sorry, just not my thing. My little high school goth heart just can't handle this very well. Yeah, there you go. There it is. Ugh, God. That's an entirely Rococo interior of a church. Kind of looks like cotton candy threw up all over it. There's a little bit of that Baroque gold and red in there, but really this is the pastels and the chubby angels just really kind of give it away. And the white, yeah, it's just, no. Here, the interior of another Rococo building. Rococo isn't just a art style, it's a decorating, it's a motif. It's an entire interior design thing where your entire rooms could be done in Rococo style. And if you watch the new Beauty and the Beast, or even the old one, I think the guy who's the clock, I can't remember his name now, it escapes my mind because this is just so horrible to look at. He mentions the fact that the palace is in Baroque and Rococo design. And then if you watch the new live action version, you can definitely see that this would have taken place, the Beauty and the Beast would have taken place in France prior to the Revolution, and would have had the Baroque and Rococo style in the palace. Oh, God, okay, just look at it, admire this. Ugh, I can't look at it. There's Rococo chairs. Just, there it is. It's bad. Okay, so here are some terms commonly used to describe Rococo. Sensual, erotic, seductive, sensual, playful, romantic, sentimental, rebellious, private, because a lot of this was not meant for public viewing, as you will see very soon. I call it immoral, disgusting, and pointless, but those are my contributions at the bottom, and we'll get to that shortly. All right, so when it comes to a meaning of Rococo, if you're looking for some deep meaning based on the things that we've looked at from the High Italian Renaissance or, Baroque Las Maninas in Spain, you're not going to find that here. The best part about the meaning to these people is there isn't one. Life is just fun, and it's one big party, and it's full of laughter and flirting and private stolen moments and pastel colors, and it's just all cotton candy sweetness compared to the Baroque style, which is the complete opposite. And it actually comes from the word shell or pebble, because if you open shells up, they have kind of that iridescent color with like the light greens and pinks on the inside. And it's going to be a movement that starts in France. And that's really because I told you guys that Italy is no longer really going to be the center of the art world. The major movements are going to start taking place in France once Louis XIV gets hold of it and opens his Royal Academy. And I like to point out that this is the art of the aristocracy. I mean, this is all about, the French Rococo is not about the church at all. It's, even though some churches decorated their inside in Rococo, it's about the upper class. And Louis XIV had died, leaving behind Louis XV, who was only 5 years old, who will grow up basically living this lifestyle that you see in Rococo paintings. And what's going to start happening is these aristocrats who were these land-owning nobles, these wealthy people in France who've kind of been under the controlling thumb of Louis XIV. It's like they're free. They're free to go do whatever they want. And the court of, France was very scandalous. I mean, it was very loose in its morals. There was a lot of infidelity. There was a lot of drinking, a lot of gambling. And that lifestyle is going to just kind of continue without the worry of Louis XIV kind of watching over them all the time, because the king was a child. So Rococo is this rebellion of freedom and happy times. It's kind of like if you've watched Wizard of Oz after the Wicked Witch is dead and the Munchkins come out singing, ding dong, the witch is dead. I'm really sorry you had to hear me sing, but you get the point. Like, it was, we're free, we can party now, we can go about our pleasures as we want them without worrying about Louis XIV. So one of the places we're really going to see Rococo take form is in French salons. All right, so after Louis XIV, because at Versailles, he basically required the nobles to stay at Versailles for very long periods of time so he could spy on them and keep an eye on them, make sure they weren't raising their own militaries to overthrow him. But now they're free, and they kind of take the decorative style of Baroque that they saw at Versailles, and they take it back to their own private homes. And it's much softer and, less harsh colors and much more pastel colors. And, in these salons, this is where they would have, in fact, the Enlightenment is really going to take place in salons, where people can sit down and talk in their own private homes with their own private ideas without worrying that what they were saying was treason against the king. And they actually made fun of, the king and queen during this time in their, private homes. And we start to see Rococo develop as not just a art style we're seeing paintings, but it will actually become a design style, like an entire interior design theme that people would use. Like that god-awfulness right there. Just no. I'm sorry, just no. Here's another one. See, you can see it's everything. It's the furniture, it's the carpets, it's the walls, it's the ceilings. It's like Rococo just threw up all over these rooms. Is everywhere. Like it's like getting gum in your hair. You just really can't get it out unless you cut it out. I mean, peanut butter doesn't really work that well. There's another one. I just can't. Sorry. All right, now another thing, Rococo is not really an architectural style. So if you're gonna walk by a building on the outside and go, oh, what an architectural design, that's Rococo. Nope, it's not. Rococo is an interior design, not exterior. So a lot of the times you would have churches that would look Baroque on the outside. You'd be like, oh, this should be interesting going inside. And then you'd walk inside and be like, oh my gosh, this is nothing like what the outside looks like. Because it would have that Baroque drama and movement and busyness. And then you'd go into the inside and it would be completely different, kind of like this. This is a church in Germany called Vierzehnheiligen, which is the Church of the Nine Saints. And you can see that the exterior looks nothing like the interior, which is incredibly Rococo. But we do see those, Baroque ceiling techniques, so that's kind of cool. Just to give you an idea, all right, on the left is Borromini, who did San Carlo of the Four Fountains. And on the right is the French Rococo, which obviously even the Catholic Church wouldn't have really liked a whole lot in Rome because they were trying to clean up their image, and this doesn't really do that. So the really bad thing about Rococo, that, I mean, among other things, just its whole generalness, awful terribleness, is that it's going to roam. It's going to move outside of France, because they're going to be people from France, especially in Canada and St. Louis and South America, who are going to travel over here, and they want to make the new world seem like home. So because the Americas have been discovered and are being settled, French Canada, the Louisiana territories, we're actually going to see this Rococo style make its way over here into the early colonial United States. Okay, so I told you that Rococo is a rebellion, and in a way, it kind of is like Mannerist, but it's much different. There's not as much logical thought into it. Like Mannerist was bending and breaking the rules. Rococo is just, we're going to do something different, all right? Let's do something new, all right? So if Baroque is about balance, so yeah, movement, but balanced movement and, still composed compositions. Okay, so also, if we're talking about Rococo, sorry, I had to pause it because somebody came into my room. If Baroque is all about balance and symmetry, Rococo almost always seems a little bit clumsy, almost like tipsy. Like everything's just kind of flowing, and the whole tone isn't very serious or with depth of meaning. It's just very playful, very celebratory, celebrating wealth, celebrating leisure, celebrating love, not so much worried about heavy things like we see in Baroque. Now it's much, much different. Even the portraits are going to be much more lighter and fun and playful. And instead of heavy colors that you would see on like state flags, like the reds and the blacks and the golds, now you're going to see just lots of whites and pastels. So I actually I put this in here, that if Baroque focuses on heaven, then Rococo focuses on earthly pleasures. Like it literally comes back down to earth and worries about the here and now, the life's too short to not have fun kind of idea. So when we looked in Baroque, we saw this theme that we talked about of the vanitas, which is, I showed you that even still lifes in the Netherlands were meant to, yes, show off the artist's talent, but also to kind of show, like with fruits and insects and things like that, that it all rots, it all goes away, and that, earthly pleasures are only temporary, you have to worry about your next life. The fête galante, right, is the French complete opposite of the vanitas, where the fête galante is more about having a good time, and it's a party, and life is short, and it's outdoor. It's a party, like literally means a fête or a celebration. Like it's outdoor parties with young single people, sometimes married and cheating on each other or whatever, but it's about love and people just enjoying life. And sometimes it's in secret, like with trees and walls, and kind of making it mysterious and fun. And they do really like this idea of what they called Arcadia, because of course France does have classicism. So there was a place in Greece called Arcadia, which is what they considered heaven or paradise to look like. So this Arcadian theme of these landscapes and gardens and things like that is this kind of idea of, Greek paradise on earth. And I put in here the Beauty and the Beast clip because it really does kind of come from that, essentially. All right, so this is just an example. This is called Pilgrimage to Cytherea, and this is actually an island where Venus supposedly lived. So it's basically the island of love, and these people are making this pilgrimage here to come and experience love and, be together, kind of isolation. You can see the trees kind of bend over them, and, it's these beautiful pastel colors and little cupids flying around everywhere. And it's just really all about happiness and love and this light feeling and just enjoying life as it is. Just another example. Oh, this is how it would have been shown before. Like this is a bacchanal. All right, in comparison, like to what we would have seen with Rococo. Here's another example. They're kind of in an older building, kind of tucked away. You've got people flirting and dancing. There's gardens, there's fountains, kind of still an isolated place for, young lovers. It's kind of this happiness, and hazy. Rococo always looks a little bit hazy, whereas Baroque is generally very clear, and very, intense lighting. This is kind of hazy, kind of like a dream, if you will. Rococo art, a lot of it was meant for private. It was used for private homes or private boudoirs, which is a bedroom. And a lot of it was condemned by like the Catholic members of society who were more conservative, because they're like, oh my gosh, this is really not appropriate to be shown in public. And just to kind of give you an example of that, this is a woman reclining by Boucher. And this was considered like just too much for public viewing. But here's the thing, it wasn't like people were going, no, no, don't paint it. It was just more like, hey, just be careful where you're putting it. All right, make sure it's in an appropriate location for viewing. All right, and then there's been conversations of which is actually more scandalous. Is it Titian, or is it this one, or is it the Ecstasy of Saint Teresa? Like, you've got all kinds of arguments to be made about which one is actually the worst one, whatever you want to say by worst. All right. So we're going to look at one very famous Rococo artist from France, and that's going to be Fragonard. So Fragonard is from France, and he likes to paint about the flirt. All right, so that's kind of his thing, is flirtation and romantic relationships and courtships, and he's not as erotic as you would see with like Boucher, with the woman reclining. So for example, this is the love letter where she's looking at, ooh, I got a secret admirer, and she's kind of like teasing you with it, like, I'm not going to tell you. And she's sitting at her writing desk thinking about, is she going to send this back, you know? And of course, a dog is with her. So does that mean that she's going to be loyal to this person, or is he loyal to her? So this guy was actually allowed in to one of the French Academy art schools because of the work that he submitted. And he was, you know, allowed to kind of help establish this new genre, which fit in with what the French wanted in the Royal Academy, because there were still those classical references in it. Fragonard, one of the things I need you guys to know coming up is that the Rococo is going to be something that helps start the French Revolution, because the French Revolution in 1789 is going to be all about the French being very, very upset that the upper caste, like the aristocrats and the church, were 3% of the population, and they paid no taxes, and they were wealthy and could afford food, whereas everybody else who is overtaxed, and the third estate, it was 97% of the population, had no food, was starving to death. Children were starving. It was a terrible time in France. And the Rococo paintings and artwork just basically rubbed the people's nose in it. Like, these people could afford to spend money on paintings, and then of course the stuff they're showing in the paintings didn't make things any better, just basically bragging about how wonderful and carefree their life was. And the French Revolution is going to really ruin a lot of these artists who are Rococo artists, because Fragonard painted for the royal family, who is going to be blamed for the state of the people. And in fact, Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette will both be beheaded, as will many of their favorites who lived with them in the royal palace. So Fragonard, almost, because he worked for the royal family, was about to be executed during the Reign of Terror. But then somehow they swapped him out with the man who actually invented the guillotine, and he was beheaded instead, right? So the Rococo only runs until about 1750, when people start to kind of rebel against this kind of frivolous behavior. And yeah, Fragonard was almost a victim of that. So the work of art that he is most famous for is the Swing, which was painted in 1766, as the Rococo is really starting to fade out of style. And originally, they were not going to allow this painting into the Royal Academy's gallery. They were like, no, it's too sexually explicit. And here's why. If you look at this scene that's going on, this girl is being pushed by an admirer on the swing, and she's swinging forward, and hidden behind these bushes down here that you can see is another admirer, who this guy from the perspective has no idea that he's there. And she's flirting with him. She's kicking her shoe off in delight. He can definitely see up her skirt. I mean, it's very, very, and then Cupid over here on the left is kind of saying, shh, like, you know, I'm not going to tell. Are you going to tell? Like, almost keeping a secret. So you've got that classical Greek reference in here, but the pastel colors definitely draw attention to her and the look on her face, and everything draws your eye towards the man pushing her. But then you don't realize that the swing, the lines of the swing and the ropes holding it, draw your eye towards the guy who is reaching towards her longingly while this is happening. So all this painting is about flirting and cheating and not loyalty. And you've got the little cupids of love embracing in the background, and like, one of them is trying to hold the other one, but the other one's looking away, kind of like the two men vying for her attention here. Like, she's looking towards the other guy. All right. There are theories on whether or not the man pushing her is a bishop. Recent theories don't think it is. They think it was just her admirer who was pushing her and like her suitor, and then but she's got a secret because hidden behind the bushes is this other guy who kind of holds a hand out to be like, oh, I'm not looking, I'm covering my eyes, but he's kind of like this, and he definitely can. And Cupid is here kind of keeping the secret. And it's got that hazy kind of look to it, like kind of dreamy, and then definitely the pastel colors. And it's in a secretive environment where, you know, not everybody knows what's going on here. Now, here's what really gets me. They put this painting in Frozen. They put it in Frozen. This painting, which is about this topic, is in Frozen, a kids movie that both my kids like. And I've got a boy and a girl, and they love this movie. And look what Disney did. Just look at it. They took the Cupid and they took the guy out because they knew that it was scandalous. So in order to change this completely, they had to make it G-rated, which is exactly what they did. But the truth behind this painting is that it's far from that, right? By the way, also in Frozen is another painting that's actually one of Bruegel's, if you notice, which is okay, because this would have taken place in the north. So I guess Norway or Sweden or whoever would have had access to seeing Bruegel and Fragonard in France. I don't know. All right, so again, I kind of already mentioned this, that the Rococo in France is going to be a visual representation of what's going to cause France to have their revolution, where they're going to rise up and become so angry against these upper two estates, like the rich people who are commissioning these paintings and showing off their wealth and everything they have and how much leisure that they have. So this is all going to help spark the French Revolution and also help with the neoclassical movement that will represent the ideas of the revolution. So we're going to stop here, and the second part of Rococo is going to look at considering whether or not what England had during this time was really Rococo, but we'll get to that later.